I'm Barbara Turley and you're watching Feminine Wealth TV, the show that uncovers the diamond tips on creating truly conscious wealth from change makers, world shakers and wealth creators. Today's show, we're going to be talking about the power of leveraging your business using joint ventures, partnerships and of course getting investors on board. And I'm joined to talk about this topic by Claire Wivell Plater from The Fold Legal. Welcome to the show, Claire.
Thank you, Barbara.
So, as always, I like to start the show with a little story about how I met my guest and why I chose them for the show. So, how I met Claire was a few weeks ago. I had a little issue in my business, and realistically, it was a legal issue that I needed legal advice on. But I procrastinated about getting advice. I was, avoiding going to a lawyer. Because what they say, you don't want to be going to the lawyers because that's going to cost a fortune. So I was asking everybody in my industry, who had the answer to this question. And an industry colleague said to me, you need to go and see Claire over at The Fold. And I thought, okay. So I looked up the website. And what immediately struck me was the fact that on your website, you have photos of each of you as children on your profile pages. So I just absolutely loved that. And it drew me into going to see Claire, and we struck up this amazing conversation about business and life, and it was a really, really good experience for me. So that's why I chose to have you on the show today.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what was the decision to have the profile pictures? I love that about your website. What was the decision to have those profile pictures as children?
I guess the issue was that we wanted to show people that we were accessible. And so not only do we have pictures of us as babies, so our baby photos is the initial thing that you see about us, but then when you click through, you actually see us all at various stages of our lives, doing things outside of work as well,
so
and at different ages, to make it real, to make people understand that we're people too. Lawyers like to put themselves on a pedestal sometimes, and our clients are all SME businesses, they're all entrepreneurs, they're all people like us that have we have the same issues and concerns as they do. So I wanted them to feel they could relate to us.
Yeah, well, I definitely felt like that, and that was what really drew me into the...
Despite the fact I should say that that's my only time I ever got on a horse.
Oh, was it? Oh, wow, because I'm a horse person, so maybe that was the reason I actually went into the business, because I do love horses. But something else I read when I was reading your profile, you said that you had several escapes from a Tasmanian apple farm, a big law firm and a major financial institution before finding your calling in the form of the Fold Legal. So can you tell us a bit about your journey there, and particularly the use of the word escape?
Well, I suppose the reason it feels like escape initially in Tasmania was I grew up on an apple farm in Tasmania, but I never felt like I belonged there.
Yeah.
I just didn't think that I didn't like the outdoors, I didn't particularly like the farm, I didn't like being dirty. And I liked books, I liked reading, and I just, knew that wasn't going to be my life. And then when I was 9, and then again when I was 12, my family brought me to Sydney. And I just never forget driving down into Sydney from the northern part of northern suburbs and seeing that vista of the harbour and the water and the bridge, and I just thought, this is where I'm going to live.
Actually, that resonates with me, because the first time I arrived in Australia, I landed into Sydney, and I kind of was here as a backpacker, and I remember that moment of seeing the harbour and going, I want to live here long term. I really resonate with that feeling.
That's right. So basically, I never really even applied to go to university in Tasmania. I enrolled at ANU and came up to Sydney after a few years, and I've been here ever since, and I love it.
And did you start out at the big box sort of law firms? Was that where you started?
Well, no, I didn't actually. I had 1 year in a very unfortunate small law firm that doesn't exist anymore, and realising that wasn't a place to be, I managed to find another role, quite fortuitously, through a friend, in a firm that actually wasn't a large firm at that stage. I was lucky enough to join it when it started to grow, and I grew with it. So by the age of 30, I was a partner in a fairly, it was a tier 2 firm, not a tier 1 firm, but I was a partner there at the age of 30, just because it had experienced incredible growth in the last 6 years, and I was lucky enough to grow with it.
And then what was the decision to move on from there? So you were now partner. Oh my God, you get to 30, you've made a partner, it's like your life is made, and you decide to move on from there. What was the decision?
Well, it is interesting because it was like that. It felt like, my God, I've arrived at 30. But of course, every arrival is just a beginning, and so over the next 11 years as partner, the firm continued to grow. We became a national firm, and then it started to corporatise. And that was the beginning of the end for me, because instead of it being a place where achievement was recognised and shared, it became a place where people were pitted against each other. Individual.
It's such a bad energy to have in a business. The banks have this problem, or I mean, I shouldn't blanket say that, but they have that problem as well.
Yes, precisely.
Divide and conquer.
Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, the whole sort of concept of partnership is that everybody contributes equally, and if they don't, you manage them either up or out until they do. And that was what ceased to happen. They thought they could overcome the difficulty of managing people with remuneration structures and reporting
bonuses and reporting lines and politics, and what comes of that actually is just more and more politics and unhappiness and angst in the business.
And it's just not a good recipe for in my view, for business, and particularly for legal partnerships, where, you know, a large firm like that has a series of experts. And it's really important for the health of the firm and the reputation of the firm for the experts to actually do the work that they are good at, and for you as another partner who might not have the expertise to pass that on to somebody else, so that you're not swimming in a pond that you're not familiar with. And that's what stops happening, unfortunately. And sharing clients also stops happening. And then, as these firms grow, what happens is that those decisions about who does what is made for you by other people than yourself. And that's even more demoralising and damaging. Now, I wasn't there when that happened. I left at the point where I could see that it wasn't going to be a collegiate atmosphere anymore, and I didn't want to play in that space.
And is that what led you then? Was the fold after that? Or was this the thing that led you on this journey towards going back into a boutique business, which was what you started in?
Well, I sort of fell out of the frying pan into the fire, because I went to work for a very large financial institution. And if I had thought that politics and diminution of creativity were a problem in a law firm that was corporatising, I really found out what it meant when I went to a large financial institution.
There's plenty of reporting lines there.
Yes.
Having been in those financial institutions myself, I know full well the politics, and particularly the pitting against each other thing.
That's right.
It's very masculine energy driven.
It was incredibly masculine. And I think the thing that upset me the most when I was there, that nothing seemed to be about shareholder interests. It all seemed to be about furthering the careers and the individual fiefdoms of the people working in the business. And again, that just didn't interest me. I found it very difficult to find a purpose for being in that firm, and also to find a way to use my skills, because it was primarily the problem of getting anything done when you had to work through so many layers of people. But then also, not just, you know, it wasn't just the fact that you might have had a good idea, it was whether it suited the aspirations of other people for you to be permitted to use that idea in the business as well.
Do you think actually, because I know this is something, I mean, everything's resonating with me here, because I obviously had spent a long time in the financial industry, but women are leaving the corporate world in quite massive amounts at the moment, and they're going it alone. They're starting their own businesses, like what you've done, what I've done. Do you think that's been a cause? Are women waking up to this and going, you know what, I can't do this anymore, I can't fit into this structure anymore? Do you think that's a problem out there?
Look, I think so. Yeah. I think you used the word masculine energy a moment ago,
yeah.
And I think that even with all of the best will in the world and the talking that they're doing, big organisations are still very masculine driven, and I think that we're a long way away from big business being able to recognise and value and really incorporate female energy and values into the business.
I think, I do. I think they're trying really, really hard, but there's something missing, and women who are leaving are finding that they're coming home.
Yes.
When they do find their own business, or I mean, you said, you know, that it was a calling for you, or the fold is when you finally felt at home. Would that be true to say about your own business now?
Absolutely. Well, certainly I knew I was never going to find a place where I felt comfortable and fitted in a large organisation, whether it be a law firm or a financial institution, or indeed any other corporate. But so was the fold initially that? Was that the reason for doing it? No, probably not. It was probably something I discovered later.
Right. Okay.
It was more opportunistic, in fact.
So tell me about that. Like, so I know that you said actually back in the beginning there was a business partner involved as well. So tell me about the genesis of the fold.
Okay.
Where did it come out of, and how did you fall into it?
Okay. Well, in 2002 there was a very large piece of reform in the financial services industry. It was called the Financial Services Reform Act, of all things. And it was a very complex piece of legislation. It involved every element of businesses, from the way that they interact with their customers to the way that they run their business.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of it, basically. You had acts, you had regulations, you had any number of regulatory guides. And
the financial industry loves regulation.
We do. We do. Well, the industry doesn't love it, but the
industry
regulator
hates it, but the regulator loves. I mean, there's acts for everything, and so you're probably in a great business, really.
Bring it on.
Dealing with that
absolutely. So what we could see, when I was at Phillips Fox, what I had done is worked as an insurance specialist, and I particularly worked with a lot of insurance brokers, and I could see that they were going to struggle with coming to terms with all this regulation. In particular, they were going to need to have documented procedures for pretty much everything that opened and shut. And insurance brokers aren't necessarily, that's not what they do.
I suppose a lot of business owners would be like that, where they this is not the core reason why they went into a particular field or an area. I mean, financial advisors would be the same.
Absolutely.
It's really tedious because what they want to be doing is dealing with the clients.
Identifying risks.
And helping.
Exactly, identifying risks, identifying products, insurance policies that will manage those risks, and basically helping their clients to solve those problems. So whilst many of them had and continue to have extremely good businesses, they weren't necessarily as disciplined and structured in terms of documenting their processes as the new legislation was expecting them to be. So I could see a need for them that they would need help with that. And the woman that I went into business with had been very involved with the Insurance Brokers Industry Association. In my career as a lawyer, I'd looked after many insurance brokers as well. So between us, we knew the industry incredibly well. And we were very lucky that we were actively promoted by the Industry Association to help brokers with converting their businesses and doing the work that they needed to do to get ready for the legislation.
Well, you came along at the right time.
We did.
Because this is the interesting thing as well. I mean, I love the fact that you said you saw an opportunity. So it was opportunistic, actually. And I think that is, in business, that's so key as well. I mean, you can have a passion, but you also have to be really opportunistic and spot a diamond opportunity when it comes your way.
That's right. And to be honest, I don't even take the credit for spotting the opportunity, because my business partner, it was given to her by the Industry Association, who said, we'd like you to expand what you're currently doing, which was helping brokers manage professional risk, into a full compliance system. And she, not being a lawyer, realised that she needed some help with that, so she asked me to be involved.
Oh, nice,
Yeah, so it was lucky.
And what about, originally, you went into was it a partnership originally? Or?
We set it up as a business, 50-50 ownership.
Right, okay.
And we had one company that we did that with. Then we, after about a year, we decided that we needed a legal firm. And so we set up a law firm. We had an excellent young lawyer who we'd recruited out of Phillips Fox, again, working with us. So we gave her a small share in that, but Valerie, my partner, and I owned the rest of it 50-50. And then a few months later, we thought that there was an opportunity to provide HR services and training services into the same client base. So we set up a third company which my partner's sister became an equal shareholder as well. So it was a slightly complex structure, but it worked for us. That we ran the companies very much as one, but there was just different ownership.
So Claire, with partnerships, how well did you know the other woman when you first went into the partnership? Did you know her well?
No, not terribly well. We had known each other superficially for probably about 10 years. We'd met maybe once every 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
So no, I didn't know her terribly well. She had an excellent reputation in the industry. She was certainly highly respected in the insurance industry. And she brought with her an enormous amount of know-how about how insurance brokers operated, how the industry operated, how underwriting agencies operated. I brought with me a lot of legal knowledge about exactly the same things. So together,
it was a perfect synergy.
It was an excellent synergy.
Yes. And what about, because I know, obviously partnerships, they can go really wrong. They can be a real minefield. Were there any challenges for you guys early on that you can share? Maybe, I think partnerships are a challenging area anyway.
I think early on it worked incredibly well.
Right. Okay.
And indeed, in many things, we shared decisions. We always discussed things. We'd talk on the phone many times each day, because she was on the Gold Coast and I was in Sydney.
Oh, okay.
So it went really well. I left all the running of the business, the operational part of the business, up to her. I was in charge, if you like, of the technical, legal, operational side of preparing our products, because we created compliance manuals, and indeed delivering quite a bit of the more technical advice that we gave to clients. She was involved in administering the business, very much involved in the marketing, finding clients in the early days, which was
Very important
fantastic.
role, yes.
Very, very
difficult role,
important
important role, yeah.
And as the business grew, she became she ran all the administration side, and I ran much of the sort of legal and product side, continued to do that. I think our challenges probably came later.
Right, okay, yeah. And how did you deal? I mean, you know, I think when things start out and you get a partnership and it's all working really well and business is going well, but the challenge, of course, is later.
Yes.
If things do go wrong. You know, I mean, what advice would you give to anyone who is thinking about doing a partnership? Are there any things like that you would say you wish you'd done in the beginning to protect against things going wrong, or what would be your view?
Gosh, you know, it's such a hard thing because the things that became challenging in our business were that we were doing too much. And so we were trying to run too many initiatives all at the same time. That
of course, you had HR, you had this, you know, you had 3 different companies effectively running.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so what happened was that my partner and I tended to be managing each other and others more than actually being involved in productive work for the business. And financially, that just didn't work, basically.
Yeah, okay.
Also, the other thing that happened, and this is something which could not have been predicted from the outset, one part of the business was much more financially profitable than the other part.
Right, okay.
But what we didn't do was set up the metrics of the business in terms of our management accounting in a way that adequately measured that. So it was masked for a very long time. And that actually meant that we prolonged that situation for much longer than we should have, because there wasn't clear reporting around which parts of the business were actually more productive than the others. So, you know, in business, it's really important to understand what's working for you and what's not. When it's not working, you try to make it work, you give it a fair go, and then when everything that you do isn't sufficient to actually turn that element of business into a profitable part, you have to make that
decision. You have to let it go.
Yeah, well, you have to do something.
Well, mind you, if you don't know in the first place, though, what parts of the business are working and what parts aren't, because you don't have this transparency of accounting or whatever, then that's a disaster, really. Because then you've got parts of the business that are pulling other parts down you don't even know.
Well, exactly, and that's what turned out to be the case financially in this respect. Yeah. There were other synergies that were there. The joint marketing was fantastic. It meant that we were very visible because we were all marketing to the same industries, but there were just very, very different, huge differences in the contributions made by each, which just weren't sustainable long term.
And so in your line of work now and the businesses that you're dealing with, I mean, obviously I know a lot of who you deal with are financial services businesses, but you do branch out into other areas.
Yes.
With a lot of these businesses as well, they're bringing on investors, they're doing shareholder agreements, they're buying and selling, they're doing partnerships and joint ventures. These are all great ways of obviously leveraging your business, and creating greater scale, etc. What are the major pitfalls, though, that you see with businesses coming in trying to do those things? Is it that their lack of knowledge in that area, or what are the major pitfalls that you see?
I think, it really depends on whether it's a new business or a mature business. So we work very extensively with financial planning businesses as well, and we're seeing an enormous amount of work being done there in forming joint venture and referral style arrangements with accounting firms, legal firms, other types of firms who have clients that need financial advice but who don't necessarily want to provide those services themselves. And so we see some of them work well, and we see some of them not work well.
Right.
The ones that work well are the ones where, first of all, they're very clear about the objectives, and they're very clear about the role that each party will play and what the limits on that role are. They're also clear about what they expect each party to contribute and what they expect each party to get out of it. They also make sure that there is enough in it for each party for them to be motivated to make it work.
Yeah, because both sides, otherwise, it's not going to. It just doesn't work.
That's right.
A perfectly good joint venture on paper can just go.
That's right. Let's take a referral as an example.
Yeah.
Say you think if you've got a business, you think it'd be nice for your clients to have the opportunity to go to a trusted partner. And that's all good. And it starts out nicely, and so you say, I'll refer all my clients who need financial advice to you.
Yeah.
And that's a lovely idea. But unless you nurture that relationship with the planner, for example, in such a way that you can, first of all, be confident that they're delivering services that are the sorts of services and with the same sort of professionalism as you would deliver.
That you would deliver, because you never know inside someone else's business. It might look great from the outside, but you don't know what the customer experience is.
That's right. So you need to do due diligence on that up front, and you need to keep a weather eye on it, because you don't want to be in a situation where your reputation can be damaged because you've referred the client to somebody who might have different values and standards than you. Secondly, we find that if there's not enough in it for both parties, in the sense of there being and it doesn't have to be financial, it really depends on what it is, but often financial helps, it tends to peter out, those sorts of relationships.
There's the energy to keep pushing it.
And that can be a number of things. Financial is excellent. I think that works really well. But it can't be all one way. But also just communication and making sure that, there's reporting back, that there's that the person to whom the clients are being referred isn't just grabbing them and running with them, that they actually report back to the accountant with, of course, the client's consent on how they're going, what they're doing, to help, say, the accountant better service their clients as well. So making sure that there is true duality in the way that the service is operating, I think, is very important.
It's very important. And what about, I know at the moment a big buzzword out there is capital raising.
Yes.
Everybody's looking for angel investors, everybody's raising capital, it just is everywhere.
Yes.
But my personal view is there's a lot of businesses, particularly startups, running around looking for capital that either don't need it or shouldn't be looking for it.
Yes.
What would you say to startups that are just, they feel hamstrung and they say, I need money, I need money. What would you say to them about raising capital and bringing new investors on board?
I guess, I would say be mean, be stingy.
Yeah.
Find a way.
It's your company.
It's your money.
They'll take their pound of flesh. Yeah.
If you're going to raise money at the outset, the earlier you raise money, the more your investor will want from you.
Yes.
So, and the more mature your business is, the less they will expect from you. So if you want to raise money right at the outset before you've got anything at all, your investor may well want a very large proportion of a share of your business. What that does is a number of things. First of all, it leaves very little on the table for you. Yes. Secondly, it constrains your ability to raise money from other investors at other times in the future.
Oh, of course, that's a good point. Now, I hadn't really thought about that one, because if you take on an early investor and then they get a big share, then they have a really big say in what happens later.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
And so they may insist, for example, on being the further capital provider if the business is going really well. They may not permit you to go out and get other shareholders or investors who might be able to bring other things to the table. I'd also be really careful to make sure that it's not just a money investment, that it's actually someone who can bring something to the business as well.
In terms of expertise, like a mentor.
A mentor, maybe. Yeah. It may be that they can direct clients your way. It may be that they can create other opportunities for you, open doors for you in the business. So these things are all very important. And the more they can do of those things that will help to secure the success of your business, the more likely you are to potentially want to engage at an earlier stage. But, I was in the lucky position that in our business, we've actually never borrowed a cent from the very beginning.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that.
Yes.
I'm more of a bootstrapper, so I think you've got to get in there. Obviously, as we talked earlier, if you're building apps and websites and big technology platforms, you probably do need investors on board or some capital. But typically speaking, a lot of the women I know that are launching businesses, they're really bootstrapping is, I think, the way to go.
Yes.
Just get on with it and keep your company.
We had what I like to call our garage phase, where we literally worked from our garages. We weren't slumming it. It was a
nice garage.
Yes. It was a room above the garage in a nice new house. So it was pretty okay until summer came and we didn't have any air conditioning. But the point was we didn't pay any rent, neither of us. And so we didn't have that impost on the business from the outset. We also didn't have any salaries to speak of because we did all our own admin and the business was relatively small.
You just kind of have to do that in the beginning, really, don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. There was no choice, particularly as I spent the first 3 months of the business actually writing a lot of our product. We then sold masses of it and we reaped the reward of that.
Oh, that's great. And that work, because I know that I'm writing content at the moment and it's such a big job, but you know that once you've created it once, you can keep selling it.
Yes.
You've got your product there.
That's right. Well, to be honest, we were overwhelmed with what we did sell. In the insurance broking industry, which was our very first foray, we estimate that over 65% of insurance brokers bought our product. So you can imagine
that's a roaring success.
I wish it was still the case. I mean, many of them have updated it and we have services to update. But then when we did our other product for financial planners and mortgage brokers, there were other products available in the marketplace by that time, or they'd used other methods to document their procedures. So we have a steady flow of sales on those. And
now, just on that, actually, a product. Tell me about that. What kind of product? When you say product, was it an information product? Was it a device product?
Yes, that's a very good question, because you don't normally hear lawyers talk about products.
About products.
So this is part of the philosophy of our business, was about knowledge leverage. My concept was that it seemed a terrible waste to me that a client would come into the office or ring me on the phone, and I would give them a piece of beautiful technical legal advice that not only applied to them, it applied to many other people.
Lots of people, yes.
So our view was, well, let's see if we can leverage that knowledge by turning it into a procedure or turning it into a tool or a template that we could then sell to other clients who might need it. So that's what we meant by products. It was turning our know-how into something that we could then offer to other people.
You were absolutely ahead of your time, because the big thing out there now is productizing knowledge.
Yes.
And businesses, and for anyone out there who's trading time for money still, which is, this is the trap. You can't leverage a business if you're still trading time for money. So the only way out of that is to take your expertise and productize it and actually sell it.
Yes,
so this is where the power of leverage, and then joint ventures and partnerships and referral arrangements are great, because you've got a product that can be sold into that distribution line. Yeah,
that's right. And then the other thing that we felt would also be a way of reaching the audience that we knew needed this information was to offer training. And
the next step.
Yes, hence the training company. Now, the difference between those business models is very great. So that law firms, if you like, offer very much one-to-one advice.
Yeah.
And then product is one to some, and training should be one to many.
Yeah.
The difficulty, of course, is that they are marketed very, very differently, and this was the challenge that we underestimated, how difficult it was to actually market all three things with the different marketing methods that were required.
Were there different audiences or different end clients for each product, or was it just different ways of selling to the same client?
Same industry, but different decision makers within each client, and that's the thing that we underestimated. And so in the end, what we realised was that for that to be run out of one business with the same people operating and being in charge of it was a mistake. It would have been better to have separate businesses offering the training that could effectively leverage the information that we were creating in, say, the legal and the product. Would be a better outcome, and that's indeed how most training companies actually work. They buy in expertise and they focus on mass distribution.
Because that's their core capability. And it's a different thing. Distribution is a totally different thing from advice or product creation.
It is, as we learned.
Yeah. But what I love about that story, though, is the fact that, you were in the legal profession. And, you're in this niche financial services area, but yet the things that you learned in terms of running a business would be the same for any business.
Absolutely.
Well, I love that, and these are the tips I want the viewers to really take from this, is that it doesn't matter what industry that you're in. If you're in the legal profession, I hear people say all the time, but that wouldn't work in my industry. It does, because the business model really matters, and you've got to try and leverage your business model whatever way you can.
Yes. Yeah. One of the great things about coming from the legal profession actually is how focused the legal profession is on measuring the productivity of its people. Accountants are the same.
Yes. Is this the 6-minute increment thing?
Yeah. Personally, I don't mind it. It's okay, because at the end of the day, you get great satisfaction in watching that timesheet fill up and knowing that you've actually achieved all of that. So long as, of course, you're not padding it out and putting things in there that you genuinely shouldn't be charging for. It's actually it can be done the right way. It can be very satisfying for the field as well.
Also, I think even for a small business owner by themselves, it can be quite good, because you're getting the most out of every hour and not flapping about on Facebook.
There is that.
Yeah.
It also means as managers, you can work out who is productive in your staff. And if they're not being productive, you can seek to address the reasons why that is the case. Whereas it's more difficult when people are just working on projects, where it's hard to measure the relative contributions of different people.
Yeah, and you wonder, people work in different ways, I know, but the measuring of it is the tricky part. Yeah.
So personally, I like those disciplines. I find them actually quite useful. And certainly they enable you to manage your resources very effectively. I mean, I'm sure there are other ways of doing it, but those disciplines are actually quite useful.
Maybe you should productize that knowledge into productivity tools. That would be a totally different business for you.
Well, I guess the problem with that is that a lot of people outside the legal profession just resist it because they say, "Oh, you can't categorise what I do. You can't
Maybe
turn
we
it
can package it up into
something."
something funkier. Like we'll call it something else, but actually teach the program exactly what it is. There you go. There's an idea. So another thing I read about you, which I laughed hysterically when I saw it, you've got your creed written on your website. And your creed is, if everything's under control, you're not going fast enough. And I want to know, is that why you put after that your colleagues say that you're a terrible driver?
Oddly enough, the two things are unrelated. My terrible driving arises out of the fact that I bump into things a lot, but I mostly do that at under 25 kilometres an hour.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah. You're obviously under too much control.
Yes, that's right. So it's not about the speed of the car, but it certainly is about the speed of what's going on inside my head. So the reason I bump into things is usually because I'm trying to think of too many things at once.
Oh, that happens to me. Yeah. I'm like that. My mind is just racing all the time.
All the time. And I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way. But unfortunately, the bodywork of my car is
pays the price for it.
It does.
Yeah. So Claire, as a savvy femtrepreneur who's built amazing businesses and had an amazing career, what does the future hold for Claire?
Okay, well, the immediate future is kind of something that's in and outside of my control. I'm getting married in a few weeks' time.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that. You've introduced with that. Congratulations.
Thank you. So, despite my best intentions, I'm a bit of a bridezilla at the moment. But once
we all do that. Even the most relaxed brides out there, we all turn into bridezilla before the wedding.
Yes, the word matching is passing my lips far too many times.
Right, okay, yeah.
But, so then when my feet come back down onto the ground, what I plan to do over the next 4 to 5 years is to at least double and probably triple the size of the business.
Wow.
The reason I want to do that is I want to actually bring my staff into the business as equity partners. Basically sell down at least half my shares to them because they're tomorrow's business for me and they're the people I want to take it forward. They're the ones I know can do it. And I really believe in them and I want to give them those opportunities.
And you have obviously got quite a big vision then.
Yes.
For this business and for where you can really take it, which I love because, you have to have big vision for and also a plan to sell and how your exit strategy, I guess, down the track.
Yeah, that's right. So that happens to coincide with the my youngest son's school finishing, at which time I'd like to have a bit more flexibility. Yeah. So I guess I'll divest the rest of the business all going well over the next couple of years. And then I'd like to do some other things. I would quite like to spend some time with the regulator, for example. I'll do some consulting, some boards, really whatever work I can find where my talents are being used and I'm adding value.
Yeah, and it energises you, I suppose, is where you really want to go.
Yeah, that's right.
Claire, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you very much for joining me. If our viewers want to find out more about the great work that you do and a bit more about you, where should they go?
Okay, www.thefoldlegal.com.au.
And how about on LinkedIn?
Yes.
Are you on LinkedIn?
I'm so on LinkedIn.
Oh, good.
Yes.
You can find her on LinkedIn.
Yes, and just if you want to link in with me, please just mention Energize Wealth, and I'll be very happy to link in with you.
She's awesome. You really should. So thank you everyone again for joining us for another week and a fantastic show. I hope you will try and catch me later this week on my podcast on iTunes, where I'm going to be giving you my key takeouts from my chat with Claire today. Remember also as well that we're going to be back next week, where I'm going to be spending time with the very inspiring Marina Pasalaris from Beautiful Minds Australia. And we're going to be taking a journey into the minds of our teenage girls. And I want to see how they feel about business, money and wealth. See you then.